Do you remember Phunsukh Wangdu, the genius from Three Idiots? The engineer who believed marks don't decide intelligence, curiosity does. Millions of Indians fell in love with that character, but very few know he wasn't entirely fictional because behind Phunsukh Wangdu was a real man, a man who spent his life trying to fix India's education system. And today, the same man has stopped eating, not for a movie, not for fame, not even for himself. He's risking his own life for millions of students he's probably never met. So here's the question: what kind of life does someone have to live for an entire country to notice when you stop eating? This this isn't the story of a hunger strike. It's the story of a man behind it. Imagine walking into school and not understanding anything. Not because you're weak, not because you're lazy, but because the teacher is speaking a language you've barely heard before. That was Sonam Wangchuk. Growing up a small village in Ladakh, his world was Ladakhi. But school, it spoke Urdu. Every lesson felt foreign. Every exam felt impossible. People assumed he wasn't a bright student. But years later, he would say something that completely changes how we think about education. If a fish is judged by its ability to climb a tree, the fish isn't the problem, the system is. That single realization didn't just change his life, it became his life's mission. Most people escape broken systems. He came back to fix one. Years later, Sonam became an engineer like every ambitious graduate. He had choices: a comfortable career, a stable income, life outside Ladakh. Most people would have left. He didn't. Because every time he remembered school, he remembered the children who were still living through the same experience. So he came back not to complain, but to rebuild. He co founded an organization called SECMOL, but calling it a school doesn't quite explain it. Students repaired solar panels, ran the campus, managed finances, cooked, built things, solved real problems. Instead of asking, "Can you memorize the answer?" Sekmol asked, "Can you solve the problem?" And something incredible happened. Students who had been labeled failures started outperforming expectations, not because the students changed, because someone finally changed the system around them. And that's an idea far bigger than education. Sometimes people don't fail, the environment fails them. Most innovators specialize in one thing. Sonam Wangchuk didn't. One day he looked at education, the next day he looked at mountains. Ladakh had glaciers everywhere. Yet every year, farmers struggled for water. Sounds impossible, doesn't it? Here's why. The glaciers melted before crops actually needed water. Nature wasn't wrong. It just wasn't matching the farming calendar. Most people accepted it, Sonam didn't. He asked a question: can we save winter for spring? That question sounded ridiculous until it became one of India's most celebrated innovations: the Ice Stupa. Artificial glaciers built during winter, slowly melting months later, exactly when farmers need water. Think about that. Most people see ice and think cold. He looked at ice and saw time. The world noticed. Scientists visited. Governments studied the idea. Environmentalists praised it. Awards followed. But here's what's interesting: recognition never changed the address. He stayed exactly where he started because solving problems had become a habit. In 2009, a movie changed Indian cinema. Three Idiots. There was one character everyone remembered: Phunsukh Wangdu. Curious, fearless, obsessed with learning, not marks. And years later, director Rajkumar Hirani acknowledged that Sonam Wangchuk's ideas and educational philosophy were among the inspirations behind that character, even though the film itself is fictional. Almost overnight, millions of Indians met Sonam Wangchuk without ever hearing his name, and ironically, quietly went back to work. Television debates, no political speeches, just problem after problem. Schools, water, climate, renewable energy, mountain ecology, one solution at a time. If the story had ended there, this would have been the story of an innovator. But it didn't, because the next problem he chose to confront wasn't a mountain, it wasn't a glacier, it wasn't even a classroom. It was something much bigger: trust. Let's imagine something. You're 17. You wake up before sunrise. You study 10, sometimes 12 hours a day. You miss birthdays, festivals, trips. Your parents spend years saving for education. Your entire future depends upon one exam. Now imagine, after all of that, you hear the words paper leak. Not just rumors, national headlines, investigations, courtrooms, television debates, social media is exploding. Suddenly, the question isn't, did I study enough? It's, was the system fair? And when students begin questioning the fairness of an examination, they're not just losing marks, they're losing trust. For Sonam Wangchuk, this wasn't just another controversy, because decades earlier, he too had experienced what it feels like when the education system fails the students. Only this time, it wasn't happening to one child in Ladakh, it was happening to millions. And that's when he made a decision that surprised the entire country. Thousands of public speakers speak every day. Some post on X, some upload videos, some hold press conferences. Sonam Wangchuk chose none of them. On June 28, he quietly walked into Delhi's Jantar Mantar. There were no dramatic speeches, no grand announcement. He simply sat down and declared an indefinite hunger strike, not because he was a NEET student, not because he had a child appearing for NEET, but because he believed when students begin losing faith in the education system, someone has to stand beside them. According to Reuters, Wangchuk said he joined the movement in solidarity with protesters demanding accountability over alleged examination irregularities and called for the resignation of the Union Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan. That decision changed everything, because now this wasn't just a student protest anymore. One of India's most respected education reformers had entered the conversation. At first, many assumed it would end in a day or two. It didn't. Day 1, day 5, day 10, 15, then 17. Doctors began raising concerns. Reports said he had lost around 8 to 9 kilograms of weight. His blood sugar had dropped. His body had started breaking down muscles for energy. He had become visibly weak. And suddenly, the conversation changed. People stopped asking, what are his demands? They started asking, how long can he survive? But perhaps that was the wrong question, because Sonam Wangchuk himself had a different one. Don't ask me to end my fast. Ask why a citizen has to take such a step just to be heard. Whether you agree with him or not, that's a difficult question to ignore. As expected, India reacted. Many students supported him. Several public figures appealed to him to protect his health while also expressing support for dialogue and accountability. Others questioned whether a hunger strike was the right method. Some believed institutional reforms should happen through established democratic processes. Others argued that extraordinary situations sometimes leads to extraordinary forms of protest. And that's the thing about democracy. Agreement isn't mandatory, debate is. At the same time, the government has defended its handling of the examination controversy and has said that action has been taken against those responsible for the irregularities. The wider debate over accountability and reform, however, continues. So, the story is no longer about Sonam Wangchuk. It's about a question every student, every parent, and every citizen must eventually answer. How do we rebuild trust once it's broken? Let's go back to where the story began. As a child, Sonam Wangchuk believed the education system has failed him, so he tried to improve it. He built schools, he changed classrooms, he inspired teachers, and he looked beyond classrooms. He solved water shortages, climate challenges, mountain sustainability. Every time he saw a broken system, he tried to fix it. And today, he believes the conversation has returned to where it all started: education. Isn't it fascinating? After 4 decades, the story has come full circle. Most people become famous because of one moment, one speech, One movie, one election, one controversy. Sonam Wangchuk became influential because of 40 years. 40 years of solving problems before asking people to listen, which is why, whether you support his current protest or disagree with it, the protest cannot be understood without understanding the man. Because this isn't the story of an activist who suddenly became an educator. It's the story of an educator who eventually became an activist. And there's an important difference. Before this video began, we asked you one question. Why does the country care when one man stops eating? Now, perhaps the answer is a little clear. Not because he's famous, not because he inspired a movie, not even because he's on a hunger strike, but because for decades he built something far more than just glaciers or schools or inventions. He built credibility. And when someone spends a lifetime earning credibility, people naturally pay attention. Whether history remembers this hunger strike as a turning point or simply another chapter in a larger debate, only time will tell. But before we judge the protest, we should understand the person. Because at Truepost India, we don't just follow headlines, we follow the story behind them. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to our channel.